But today I'll be trying to talk about what happened from 1920 onwards, and then I'll come to your 52 to 77 framework. If you look at 1920 onwards, you'll find sociology become a teaching discipline in universities and it developed a professional character. So you may have a question, sir, why you are starting 1920 onwards? Because before 1920, I have given you the framework that you can understand society, or you can understand the analytical framework, or you can understand the ideological formations which were evolved because of colonial rule, which has evolved because of freedom struggle. So therefore, that was the beginning of ideological tension or ideological framework. But 1920 onwards, of course, 1920 also we got freedom 1947. So we are talking 27 before Indian independence, and 27 before Indian independence, that is from 1920 onwards. How sociology evolved in India? Yogendra Singh writes that sociology slowly became a teaching discipline in universities and its professional character began to emerge. So it starts with 1920. Specifically, I think I have said about 1918, where Peter Geddes has formed Bombay School, that teaching department as a professor of civics. Peter Geddes started sociology in Bombay. It's 1918. You have to check in the facts. But so therefore, the Yogendra Singh says that 1920 is the forming ground to understand social realities in a specific manner, or specifically under the aegis of sociology discipline. So the professional character emerges out of the teaching and research. So therefore, what Yogendra Singh is trying to refer, the impact of British and continental sociology and social anthropology also significantly contributed to the knowledge formation. What does it mean? I am saying 1920 onwards. The first point, 1920 onwards, is beginning of sociology as a teaching discipline in universities. This is the first point. Second, the continental sociology. What is called continental sociology? That you have to see continental sociology. Now, subcontinent, you can say. How does subcontinental society contributed to evolve the professionalism or professional orientation like sociology? Therefore, the continental sociology means the subcontinent, the Asian continent, you can say. The Asian continent, subcontinent has also, or the anthropological writings, the sociological writings in this continent also helped to develop sociology in India. The third important aspect, which I have already said, the anthropological fieldwork tradition on British pattern was also very important. This is the third point in the series, how sociology evolved in India. British pattern of anthropology. Many Britishers, they engaged British anthropologists to study Indian society. This is one. The other one is about people, those who were interested to study society and they got the exposure to European philosophy, European traditions, they visit Europe, they stayed over there. I think that also has given a foreground that how this British pattern of anthropological tradition emerged in India. It has 2 points again. The first point is that British anthropologists came to India, study India, and their writings helped the Britishers to rule over India. This is number one. Number two, Indian scholars visited European countries. I think they stayed over there. They got the exposure to European traditions, European learning system, as well as the British anthropological traditions, and they were influenced by that. So these two, again, has culminated to develop the professional kind of orientation of sociology in India. Fourth point, the historical research method. The historical research method also significantly contributed to help the Indian sociology to grow. What does it mean when I say that historical research method? In the way that how history is viewed. There is a book called What is History? E.H. Carr, this is the writer of the book. is E.H. Carr. You must read that book. What is history? That the prescription to study this, what is history, gives you the nuances how society and history is interconnected, how society is being influenced by the historical development. So history and society is very difficult to make a distinction or to separate these two disciplines. History, past society is the present history, and the present history is the past society. So you have to check that quotations, but I am trying to argue that history and society is quite interrelated and linked together. If you link it to the theoretical framework, evolutionary studies, for example, if you refer to the evolutionary studies, there also you can see how history and society is interlinked. What is called evolutionary studies? What is called evolutions? I have told you earlier also, evolution means how society evolved, how the growth evolved in a continuous manner. Society evolves or society moves further from homogeneity to heterogeneity, or from simple to complex, isn't it? I think that is called evolution, evolutionary aspects. So when you talk about the evolutionary aspect of society, means that the continuity between the beginning of society and where you are studying society today. So I think that continuity framework is very important, where history plays the formative roles, history plays a very important role. So evolutionary studies talk about continuity between history and society. So in that particular context, history becomes very important, and it provides a basis for societal understanding. So history and historical method, there is a difference between history and historical method. History, as I have said, about the society which were there, or the society which is there but having its historical connectivity. But the point I'm trying to argue, look at Indian society. What has happened in recent days? Of course, it is little controversial, but nothing controversy as far as you try to understand it. Whatever the present political scenario tries to do, can they deny the fact that once upon a time Mughals were there in India and they rule over India? Can Taj Mahal be demolished? But the point is, these are historical truths, and it has a link with the society. So therefore, Lucknow is considered to be a Sahar of Tehzeeb, isn't it? So in that particular context, what I'm trying to say, society and history is connected. Whatever you can do in political level, but you can't do away with this historical development. India is, that we say that there is a unity in diversity in many forms or in many ways, but it has a historical link. It contributes historically, and historical civilizations build India what is today. If you talk about the founding fathers and their contribution to build Indian constitutions or draft Indian constitution as a plural society. So in that particular context, history and society is interconnected, interlinked, and that shapes your present. But the second is historical method. Historical method means how history can be understood as a methodological tool to understand society. I'll give a reference to C. Wright Mills, The Sociological Imagination, that book. You must have a look at that particular book. But what C. Wright Mills is trying to argue, he talks about, to understand society, you must talk about history and biography. The history and biography are linked together. What is biography? So biography means a person's experience, or a person who has his own experience, what he has narrated, and this narration has a reference to history. So that is called biography. That means biography cannot be written or cannot be explained without referring to your past, without referring to your history. So biography and history is connected. And biography and history, if you connect, I think that provides you a framework called understanding persons from a historical method. So historical method means It provides a tool to explain your experience over the years. So in that sense, history and biography are linked together, and that refers or that provides a framework called historical research method. No, let me give another example. Think about Indian society today. I've said you earlier, Indian society cannot be understood without referring to colonialism. Indian constitution cannot be explored and understood without referring to freedom struggle, without referring to British rule. Clear? I think these examples provides that how history can be considered as a tool or as a research method to understand the present society. So historical method is also very important to explore the social realities. What I was trying to talk about at the beginning, I'm trying to say what are the developments which has taken place from 1920 onwards. So 1920 onwards, these developments, let me summarize the development that teaching discipline which has given a professional character to society or to sociology as a discipline. Number two, British and continental sociology contributed to formation of growth of sociology in India. The third point I have said about the continental sociological context which has formed, which has contributed for the development of sociology in India. Then the fourth point I had said about the fieldwork traditions, British fieldwork traditions, which has in two ways impacted India. One is the British engaged the anthropologists to study Indian society, and the second, the people, those who went abroad and tried to study European society or try to get influenced by European society, and that has helped to grow sociology in India. And the fifth point I have said about the history and society, the linkages, then history as research methods which provides a ground for the growth of sociology in India. Now, apart from that, the other developments what Yogendra Singh is trying to argue, that is called the developmental planning. I am talking about 1920 onwards. 1920 onwards, there are certain developmental plannings and policies, and these developmental planning specifically in the context of village, cities, tribal areas, which initiated a series of empirical studies, and this becomes a dominant tradition in sociology, but some philosophical orientation that pre-exist continue to present. Apart from these points, 5 points I told you, then the sixth point is about the developmental planning, specifically pertaining to the village, cities and tribal areas. And these developmental policies and developmental planning has given a kind of framework to Britishers as well as to Indian scholars to develop certain kind of explorative or certain kind of empirical studies, and you can say some kind of descriptive studies. So that means writings on society, writings on village, writings on cities were started in 1920 onwards, specifically by the Indian scholars. But the question mark what Yogendra Singh is trying to talk about, philosophical orientation were pre-existed and that continue to exist even during 1920 onwards. Now, when you say that the philosophical orientations exist, now what is called philosophy? How philosophy is defined? How sociology is connected with philosophy? I think these are questions which is raised. You must do your own studies to find out how philosophy is linked with society. So philosophy is about reality, but when the realities are explained in a certain manner, I think that takes towards a philosophy. But there is a link between philosophy and society. You can't deny the link between philosophy and society. Talk about Aristotle, talk about Plato, talk about Auguste Comte, talk about Herbert Spencer. I think they have a philosophical bent of mind, has contributed to look at society in a philosophical manner. So, but what is called the philosophical orientation, I'll come to little later. But Yogendra Singh is trying to say this philosophical orientation pre-existed, means it was there in 1920s or before 1920s, and during 1920s also this philosophical orientation continued. When we do PhD, you know what is the full form of PhD? It is called Doctor of Philosophy. What does it mean Doctor of Philosophy is all about? Many of you may be interested to do your PhD after completing your master's program. But what this PhD stands for? It's Doctor of Philosophy. But you are pursuing PhD in Sociology, but you will be given the degree PhD in Sociology. Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology. Why it is called Doctor of Philosophy? Because you are not studying philosophy. You are studying society. You are studying social relationships. You are studying the impact of any policies and programs. Or you are trying to narrate society in a historical manner. But you are given the degree called Doctor in Philosophy. Philosophy doesn't mean only to talk about certain philosophical nuances. No. Philosophy is linked with exploring the newness in the present societal relationship. I think that is called philosophy. Clear? So, philosophical orientation means when you talk about or when you try to study a kind of phenomena or you analyze it, but there is a philosophy behind it, or you refer to many writers and thinkers and their analytical tools and their analytical methodological aspects. I think all that makes your project a philosophical contributions. So therefore, it is called philosophy. So philosophy and sociology are linked together. Philosophy is nothing which is beyond your comprehension. No. Philosophy is based on grounding realities or based on studying the ground realities and making an explanation about it. I think that is called philosophy. So therefore, philosophical orientation is important in sociology in this sense. And therefore, whether they were studying village society, whether they're studying cities, whether they're studying about the tribal areas, I think all these things have a philosophical nuances. As I have said, studying reality in its context and explaining about it is a philosophical engagement. Philosophy and society are linked together, whether it's Hindu philosophy, whether it's Sikh philosophy, whether it's Buddhist philosophy, or whether it's Islamic philosophy or Christian philosophy. It has a link with society. As I have said yesterday, so before sociology started, the society was studied and guided by religion. So religion provides a foreground and provides a framework on the basis of society and individuals used to live their life. And to large extent, this is also happening today, that you are guided by your religious nuances and religious philosophy. So therefore, there is a link between philosophy and society and philosophical orientation we talk about. So that means I have given you 6 important points. To understand Yogendra Singh is really difficult, so I am trying to make you or give you a framework and points to understand him. So I have given you around 6 points to understand his framework, what has happened 1920s onwards. Now come to with these 6 important points. So how the theoretical dimension of Indian sociology emerged out of these 6 points. He says that all these 6, 7 happenings has contributed and created a kind of basic tensions in society. The developments what I have referred in the context of Indian society, I think these developments created a kind of tension in society. What does it mean, tension in society? And essentially, these tensions were theoretical tension. Now, when I say that these tensions were theoretical in nature, but the grounding of these tensions is in society. Let me give you an example. I think the Britishers came to India, they have introduced many laws. So, introduction of these laws brought a kind of tension in society. No changes is possible without having tension in society. I'll come to a recent example, then forget about British rule. When this Mandal Commission report came, Mandal Commission report came in 1990s. And when this Mandal Commission report was, of course, it was there during Indira Gandhi's time, but it was not implemented. Government has kept on wait for the right kind of opportunities to implement it. But when this Vishwanath Pratap Singh, I think, became the Prime Minister, he has come up with this idea to implement Mandal Commission report. What happened? All the universities and colleges were closed, students were protesting because there was a fear psychosis among the student masses that these OBC reservations will deprive certain section of the society to get into government jobs, isn't it? Because of that. So this is called a theoretical tension. This is called a tension which was there in the society. And why these tensions? Because government has initiated this report or tries to implement these reports in society. So the point I'm trying to argue, any law you frame, it brings a kind of tension in society. Means it is going to affect the thinking process of the people in society. So that creates a kind of tensions. No society in the entire history is changed without warfare or without any kind of tension. Change means it brings some kind of tension in society. What does change mean here? Change means a set of governance system which exists. And how this set of governance system, if you want to change it, some section of the society will be affected by it. So that is called the tension. Be it the Mandal Commission, be it talk about the British formulate the rules, they abolished Sati Pratha, and many other tenant system also, some rules, regulations they brought. I think it creates a kind of tension in society. So laws are in one way or other tries to question the dominant form of society. So therefore, laws are creation of knowledge which questions the established framework of the society. So what I'm trying to say, the theoretical direction of Indian sociology has or can be analyzed on the basis of the tensions which exist in the discipline since its inception. That means in sociological traditions, because of these tensions by laws, these tensions by initiating developmental policies, these laws by advocating equality, liberty and fraternity, I think all that has created a kind of tension in society, and that is also reflected in the writings of Indian sociologists. So these tensions are theoretical as well as ideological. And if when you contextualize this, I think that's the last point today. These tensions were theoretical as well as ideological. And he writes, theoretically, the important tensions exist in sociology as master theory or general theory. This is one kind of tension exists in the writings of sociology, whether you are talking about master theory or you are talking about general theory. This is one, or you are talking about conceptual schemes or conceptual categories, or you are talking about theoretical grand theory, meta theory. I think these are some kind of tensions at theoretical level that also refers to conceptual analysis, conceptual framework, conceptual schemes, and I think there is a dichotomy exists between these concepts. Then he talks about the other tension, not only at theoretical level like master theory and general theory or conceptual scheme, but also like universalism versus particularism. This is another kind of theoretical tension exists in sociology, because some writers talk about universal. Yesterday we are talking about universalization of sociology. We should develop a sociology which can be universal in nature, and there are certain theoreticians, those who argue about particularistic approach to society. So this is another kind of tension what Yogendra Singh is trying to say. Theoretical tensions not only at masters and general theory or conceptual scheme, also tension exists between universalism and particularism. or contextuality. I think these are the three important aspects: universalism, contextuality, and particularism. So, universalism, particularism, and contextuality. These are the three different paradigms to understand social realities. Whether you are trying to talk about universal, whether you are trying to talk about particular, or whether you are trying to talk about the contextuality of a situation. I think this is another kind of theoretical tension exists in the writings of society. I think these are the tensions what Yogendra Singh is trying to say. I think these tensions, why I am talking about these tensions will give you a framework, again, that how ideological development has taken place in India, and these ideological developments are coined as master theory, general theory, or conceptual schemes, or about universalism, particularism, or contextuality. I think if you refer to all these frameworks, that suggests the commitment of sociologists to understand society. You can't deny the commitment of sociologists to study society, whether within the dilemmas, within the dialectics which exist, whether you follow master theory or general theory, or you talk about, like André Béteille's book called Caste, Class, and Power. I think these are the three social categories, or these are the three conceptual schemes to understand social realities. So, in that particular context, what Yogendra Singh is trying to say, that the commitment of sociologists and the standpoint of the sociologist to theory building, which has been fluctuated over the years. It is not that same kind of trend which were followed by the sociologists. You can see there is a fluctuation. I think these categories itself suggest fluctuation, whether you are talking about grand theory, whether you are talking about narratives or meta-narratives, or you are talking about general theory. I think that also suggests about the fluctuated notion of understanding society. So therefore, there are certain success and failure theory constructing projects. That means these efforts where, there are critics, those who talk about Indian sociologists, that how, like we talk about Foucault, we talk about Derrida, we talk about Marx, we talk about Tulka Parsons, and why not any Indian scholars who can club into this classical sociological theoreticians? I think we lack in that point. But the point I am trying to say, the attempts were there. If you talk about Radha Kamal Mukherjee, he tries to talk about in his own way and to form about society, or form his ideas about society. So the point here is that theory and sociology and the theoretical attempts at times failed, or at times got success, but I don't have any exact story to tell about how these theoretical formulations were successful. But certainly there were attempts, talk about M.N. Srinivas' concept of Sanskritisation, or for that matter, André Béteille's classical work, Caste, Class, and Power. I think these works are, or Yogendra Singh's Modernization of Indian Tradition, these are the theoretical contributions by Indian sociologists, but you have to look at it in your own manner. But the point I'm trying to argue, success or failure in theory constructions, how Indian sociologists has become successful or failed in their attempt to construct theories, and which has also changed in the context of history and changing historical circumstances. So changing historical circumstances also contributed how theory can be framed, or how theory can be formulated to understand social realities. Apart from all these aspects which talk about theoretical tension existing in sociology, you can see that how there is a face-to-face critical tensions within cognitive structure. I think that this would be the last point. Cognitive structures change, or tension in cognitive structure. What I'm trying to discuss all about the philosophy, and you have to study all these readings what I have suggested you earlier, then you can able to understand me. So there is tension in cognitive structure. And this cognitive structure where tension exists, where you can talk about the role of ideology in theory constructions. The conclusion here is how ideology is being formed. How ideology is being formed in the sense because of historical development, because of infusion of laws, and because of the historical circumstances, there are theoretical tensions and there are ideological tensions. There are new ideological formulations came to exist. Refers to JP movement for that, or refers to the Ambedkarian movement. It all creates a question mark on the existing dominant frame of understanding society. So ideological tensions also, in other words, contributes towards formulation or contributes towards a new theoretical formulations. In a nutshell, what exactly I am trying to say, to contextualize your understanding about social realities, you need to look at how new laws are being framed, how these legislatives are questioning the dominant model, how these laws are giving a framework to look at society in a different manner. I think all these things contributes towards ideological tensions and theoretical tensions. And 1920 onwards, in Indian sociology, this process was continued